We're going to start today's deep dive with a really quite terrifying story. It's about a 29-year-old law student, Francis Wilson. He'd contracted COVID-19 and his lungs were failing. Fast. So fast, the doctors gave him less than 30 minutes notice before they had to put him in a medically induced coma.
Wow, 30 minutes. Just imagine that's barely enough time to, well, text people, call family, try and make peace with maybe not waking up. He emailed professors, texted friends, and then that call to his parents, he signed off with, "I'll see you on the other side." Just chilling.
Yeah, and the coma, it was medically necessary, right, to give his body a chance to rest, to heal. But Francis's experience while unconscious, it wasn't blankness. He described 9 days, 9 straight days of these horrific, really vivid nightmares. He was utterly convinced he was dead, that he'd actually crossed over.
It's an incredible story. And it really, it highlights what we're diving into today. Consciousness, that private internal awareness we all have of our experiences, and just how many different states our minds can be in, from being totally focused to deep sleep, and even these altered states of awareness like Francis went through. Thankfully, he did wake up, texted his parents, "I'm alive, Mom and Dad."
Such relief. So our mission today, as we explore the sources you brought, is really to get beyond just thinking awake or asleep. We want to dig into the brain mechanics. How does awareness actually work? And uncover some, well, maybe surprising connections between our conscious state, our health, and even our social lives. Let's unpack this. Okay, so first things first, we need some groundwork. Definitions. When scientists talk consciousness, they often split it into 2 parts, right? Awareness and arousal.
Yeah, that's right. Awareness is that subjective part, the inner experience, what it feels like to be you, thinking, sensing, planning, your private mental theater. Arousal is different. It's more physiological. It's about being engaged with the world around you, your level of wakefulness, how reactive you are.
And these 2 things, they have different drivers in the brain, which seems important. Arousal, just being awake, that's largely the job of the reticular activating system, the RAS. Runs from the brainstem up through the thalamus.
Think of the RAS as kind of the dimmer switch or maybe the gas pedal for the brain. It sets your overall level of engagement.
Okay, so RAS is the quantity of wakefulness.
Exactly. And awareness is more about the quality, that feeling of being aware that's linked to a wider network, often called the global brain workspace. Involves the prefrontal cortex, other areas too.
Right. Now, talking about that inner world, William James, the psychologist, he had that famous description, didn't he? This stream of consciousness.
Yes. That continuous flow, always changing. Images, feelings, thoughts, all tumbling along. It's a great metaphor. But James also mentioned something else, something he called the fringe of that stream.
The fringe. What's that exactly?
It's a really useful idea. It's that feeling of knowing something even before you have the full details, or having feelings about your own thoughts. It's basically what we now call metacognition, thinking about your own thinking.
Okay, thinking about thinking. And the sources you looked at found something pretty surprising about how this fringe awareness works. Something called metacognitive ease.
Yeah, it shows how easily our own self-assessment can get, well, nudged off course. They did this clever study using a standard psychology tool, a meaning and life scale. Simple questions about purpose and meaning. But here's the twist. They gave it to people in 2 ways. One version was printed normally, easy to read. The other was in this, deliberately difficult, messy font.
And what happened? Just changing the font?
People actually rated their own meaning in life as lower when they read the scale in the difficult font.
No way. Just because it was hard to read.
Exactly. The idea is this metacognitive thing kicked in. The sheer difficulty of just reading the questions made the concept of meaning in life feel harder, less accessible, maybe less real or achievable.
Wow. So your brain sort of equates the effort of reading with the effort or possibility of the thing itself. That's subtle.
It really is. It's that fringe consciousness whispering, influencing your judgment without you really noticing.
Okay, so our conscious mind is busy. But what about when we switch off, or seem to switch off? Sleep. Because sleep definitely isn't just off. There are these powerful internal clocks running the show, right? Biological rhythm.
Right. These are all sorts of periodic cycles in the body. But the big ones for this discussion are the circadian rhythms, those roughly 24-hour cycles. They control things like blood pressure, body temperature, and of course the big one, the sleep-wake cycle.
And the control center for this 24-hour rhythm.
Yeah.
It's tiny, isn't it, in the hypothalamus?
The suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN. It's the body's master clock. And what's really fascinating is how it stays on time. The SCN synchronizes itself using light, specifically light detected by the retina in your eyes.
Ah, so that's the external cue, light.
Precisely. And this explains a really difficult condition some people who are totally blind experience.
Yeah.
It's called non-24-hour sleep-wake disorder. Because their retinas can't detect that light signal, their SCN can't sync up with the day-night cycle. Their internal clock just drifts. It really shows how vital that light cue is.
So, okay, we have this clock, but why do we sleep? Why spend like a third of our lives doing it? The sources mention a couple of main theories.
Yeah, there's the restorative theory. But let's get specific about how it restores. Newer research really emphasizes sleep as the brain's cleaning service. It seems that during sleep, the brain uses something called the glymphatic system to actively flush out metabolic waste, things like amyloid proteins that build up between brain cells during the day.
Whoa, like a nightly power wash for the brain that only runs when you're asleep.
Pretty much. And then there's the brain plasticity theory. This is all about learning and memory. Sleep helps strengthen important connections between neurons, consolidates memories, moving them from short-term to longer-term storage. The old saying is true. Lose sleep, you often lose memories.
But we're often terrible at actually getting the sleep we need, especially teenagers, adolescents. Which brings up this modern issue, social jet lag.
Right. Social jet lag isn't about flying. It's when your sleep schedule is dramatically different on weekdays versus weekends. Your internal body clock, your natural preference, gets totally out of sync with your social or work schedule during the week, and then you try to catch up on weekends. You're basically giving yourself jet lag every single Monday morning.
And the consequences, particularly for young people, are quite stark, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. The research links this kind of schedule disruption directly to things like poorer grades, reaching for more sugary snacks and drinks for energy, and higher rates of weight gain. The body clock really craves consistency.
It really does. And this lack of consistency, this sleep issue, it doesn't just affect us individually, does it? It actually impacts how we connect with others.
Absolutely. That's a critical link the sources highlight. The relationship between loneliness and poor sleep. It goes both ways. Being lonely can disrupt your sleep. But crucially, poor sleep also predicts more loneliness later on. It's a vicious cycle.
And there was a specific study on this by Ben, Simon, and Walker in 2018.
Yes, a really interesting one. They wanted to see exactly what happens to our social interactions when we're sleep deprived. They compared people after a normal night's sleep versus after being awake for 24 hours straight.
Okay, so what changed in their social behavior?
Well, first, simple social distance. They had an experimenter slowly walk towards the participant who had to say when the person felt uncomfortably close. When people were sleep deprived, they needed more personal space. They felt uncomfortable much sooner as the person approached. They literally wanted people further away, social withdrawal.
They pulled back.
Yeah.
Interesting. Did they look at the brain activity?
They did, using fMRI. And that explained why they pulled back. The sleep-deprived brains showed less activity in a key social area, the part involved in theory of mind.
Theory of mind. Remind us what that is again?
Oh, right. It's basically our ability to understand other people's mental states, their intentions, beliefs, feelings. It's fundamental for smooth social interactions. When you're sleep-deprived, that area seems to be dampened. So you're less equipped to read social cues accurately, maybe less able to pick up on friendly signals.
Okay, so less socially perceptive. But that wasn't all, was it? There was another brain change?
Right. Their brains also showed more activity in what's called the near space network.
Near space network.
Yeah, it's the brain system that basically maps out the area immediately around your body and flags potential threats within that personal space. It's like your internal back-off signal.
So let me get this straight. Sleep deprivation makes you worse at understanding others and makes you feel more threatened by them being close.
Exactly. Less social skill, more perceived threat. Not a great combo for interacting.
No kidding. But the study found something even more striking, didn't it? A kind of contagion.
This was the really wild part. They had independent raters watch video clips of the participants, some rested, some sleep-deprived, just talking about neutral topics. The raters consistently judged the sleep-deprived people as looking less socially desirable, more withdrawn, maybe even a bit repellent.
Okay, that makes sense based on the brain changes. But the contagion part.
Here's the kicker. The raters themselves who were fully rested reported feeling more lonely and more socially isolated after just watching the videos of the sleep-deprived individuals.
Wow. So just observing someone who is sleep-deprived can make you feel lonely.
Apparently so. It suggests sleep deprivation doesn't just make the tired person withdraw. It triggers a kind of social withdrawal in those around them too. It actively pushes people away and seems to spread that feeling of isolation. Lack of sleep is almost antisocially contagious.
That's quite profound. The social cost is huge. Okay, shifting gears a bit. We've talked about the necessity of sleep, a state we mostly associate with lack of control. But what about actively harnessing consciousness? Like with hypnosis?
Right. And we're not just talking stage shows here. Hypnosis can induce genuinely altered states with measurable effects. Think about the case of Shelley Thomas. She reportedly underwent a 30-minute pelvic surgery using only hypnosis for pain control. No chemical anesthesia.
That's pretty incredible. It suggests a powerful level of mental control over physical experience. Do we know how that works in the brain, how it blocks pain?
Brain imaging studies have given us some real clues, and it's fascinating, almost paradoxical. When hypnotized people were given, say, a mild electric shock, something that would normally be painful, the scans showed that the lower parts of their brain, like the brain stem and midbrain, still registered the incoming signal. The sensory information got in.
So the body detected the painful stimulus.
Yes, but the key difference was in the higher brain regions, specifically the sensory cortex. Under hypnosis for pain relief, that area, the part that creates the conscious feeling of ouch, didn't activate as much, or sometimes at all.
So hypnosis isn't blocking the signal itself, but it's preventing the conscious interpretation or experience of that signal as pain?
That seems to be exactly it. It's controlling the subjective awareness of pain, even if the raw sensory input is still getting through at some level.
Very interesting. And another way people try to harness consciousness is through meditation, right?
Right. Meditation is generally about achieving a state of calm, peaceful awareness, trying not to get caught up in worry or mental chatter. And it typically involves two core practices: focused attention and open monitoring.
Focused attention is maybe what most people think of, focusing on your breath or a word or an image.
Exactly. Bringing your awareness deliberately to one thing. Open monitoring is arguably harder. It's about just observing whatever thoughts or feelings arise in that stream of consciousness, but without judging them or getting carried away by them, just letting them pass.
And brain scans have looked at experienced meditators too. What happens when they shift into that meditative state?
Yeah, fMRI studies, particularly on Zen meditators, show something really cool about this process of letting go. When they consciously switched into meditation, there was an initial burst of activity in the prefrontal cortex, that's the brain's executive control center, involved in planning and deliberate effort.
Okay, so they use effort to start meditating. That makes sense.
Right. But then what followed was the interesting part. That initial prefrontal effort led to a subsequent decrease in activity in another area called the anterior cingulate cortex, the ACC.
And the ACC is important because
The ACC is heavily involved in conscious awareness, self-monitoring, checking for errors, making willful choices. It's very active when we're deliberately controlling our thoughts or actions. So the fact that ACC activity decreased after the initial effort, that's the paradox. They used conscious control to initiate the state, but the state itself seems to involve less active monitoring and controlling of thoughts. They achieved a kind of effortless awareness.
using control to relinquish control. Fascinating. We've certainly covered a lot of ground today. We went from the subjective stream of consciousness and that weird metacognitive ease thing.
Right, to the nuts and bolts of the SCN, our internal clock, and the absolute necessity of sleep for cleaning the brain and consolidating memories.
Then the whole social dimension, social jet lag, and that really striking finding about how sleep deprivation breeds loneliness and how that loneliness can actually spread.
And finally, looking at how states like hypnosis and meditation demonstrate this remarkable capacity we have to deliberately modulate our own conscious experience, even down to the level of brain activity.
It's quite a journey through the landscape of awareness.
It is. And the sources consistently remind us, that consciousness itself remains one of the biggest mysteries in science. We started by defining it partly by its privacy, its subjectivity, and that's still the hard problem, isn't it? As one source put it, there's just no way to know that your experience of red and your friend's experience of red are exactly the same, that inner quality is fundamentally private.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, our listeners, to maybe ponder. It ties back to those core components, awareness and arousal. If we generally define consciousness by having subjective awareness and some level of physiological arousal or engagement with the environment, does that definition automatically exclude something like, say, plant consciousness?
It's provocative, right? Plants obviously don't have brains or nervous systems like ours, but they do show incredibly complex responses to their environment. They grow towards light, roots seek water, they even communicate chemically with each other, they adapt, they respond purposefully in their own way.
So the question becomes, Why do we insist that purposive behavior or the kind of awareness we recognize has to be the absolute requirement? Is our definition perhaps too, well, human-centric? Could there be other forms of awareness out there in nature that our current framework just doesn't capture?
Something to think about, perhaps, next time you find yourself in a state of focused attention.
Huh?
Or maybe just before you drift off to sleep.